morning, Faith family. It's Friday, and sadly, I think that idea of it being Friday doesn't resonate like it would typically in our normal pattern, our normal routine. Many of you, because of the COVID-19 outbreak, the pandemic, have been taken out of your vocation for a season, or your normal routine has been disrupted. And so when I say it's Friday, it just doesn't have that same excitement and enthusiasm. But I pray that regardless of whether you're at work or you're in a season where you're not able to go to work or things have just been disrupted, I pray that each day is still a special time for you to get along with God and rejoice in that day that He's made, and be glad in it and see the potential He has in it for you to glorify Him and what He has for you to do in that day. And speaking of glorifying God, nothing glorifies Him more than when we love as He has loved us. And so in day 5, we're talking about the fact that there are some things that do go together. Yesterday we talked about how there are things that do not go together. Perfect love and fear, they are not mutual to one another. They're absolutely exclusive. And so today our writer shifts the focus a little bit and says there are some things that do go together. He used the example of peanut butter and jelly, of course, peanut butter and jelly sandwich. I think more in terms of things like Cracker Barrel and biscuits, or cornbread, because they make some of the best. Or maybe even the idea of Waffle House and heart attacks. They seem to go pretty well together too. I'm just joking, by the way. But in terms of our text, John says this in 1 John chapter 5, starting in verse 19. We love because He first loved us. If anyone says, I love God, and yet hates his brother or sister, he's a liar. For the person who does not love his brother or sister whom he has seen cannot love God whom he has not seen. And we have this command from Him. The one who loves God must also love his brother and sister. And so here we see that in terms of what goes together, John is clearly saying that love for God and love for your brother or your sister, they clearly go together. They are mutual to each other. And it really fits well within the context of what John heard Jesus teach. When Jesus was approached by one of the legal experts, we'll call them, of the law, he said, Teacher, what's the greatest commandment? And he said, commandment, singular. So Jesus responded, love the Lord your God with all of your heart, with all your soul, and with all your mind. This is the greatest and most important commandment. But Jesus didn't stop there. He kept going almost in a seamless transition. The second one is just like it. Love your neighbor as yourself. All the law and the prophets depend on these two commands. And so out of that, we see Him, no doubt, teaching and instructing John the importance of that mutuality between, if I truly love God, then I'm also going to love my brother and my sister. In fact, He says this, whoever hates his brother or sister cannot love God whom he has not seen. So we can't say we love God who we haven't seen when we're showing hate and disdain for a brother or a sister who we do see. And it's fascinating because that word hate, the way that it's formed in the Greek, is speaking of a settled disposition, something that's deeply rooted to the point where it leads to bad attitude, leads to, in some cases, even a bad action, the point of maybe even a settled wrath towards someone. And so it's not talking about, I'm upset with so-and-so, or, so-and-so, we have a disagreement about something. That's not what it's talking about. It's talking about a very settled, maybe long-term attitude that has brought about some actions. Maybe you don't talk to someone that you used to talk to. Maybe you do talk, but when you do, you have words of hatred, words that are unkind, slanderous toward them. And that's just a few examples. I'm not going to exhaust that, but the whole point that John's making is this. You cannot say that you love God whom you haven't seen when you don't love your brother or sister whom you have seen. And then he says it this way, the one who loves God must also love his brother and his sister. And so one of the questions that the writer asks is a question that we typically we just don't want to answer it. We don't want to deal with it because it really forces us to come to a reality that maybe there's some relationships that we have not properly handled, that we need to resolve issues with, that we need to be reconciled with. And he asks this question, how do you need to grow in loving others well? Ouch. I'd much rather not consider that question, because it's absolutely going to mean, and you know this, don't you? It's going to mean me contemplating and considering those relationships that are hard for me. those relationships, those individuals that are tough to love. Maybe they speak truth with such a stridency, a sharp edge that it's just hard to take it sometimes, or maybe they're that person that just you never can find a ray of sunlight, even on the brightest, sunniest day. They're always down. But fact of the matter is, we are commanded to love as God has loved us. In fact, that's what John said. We love because God first loved us. We know what true love is because God demonstrated it first for us and to us through the giving of the Son, the sacrificial death of Jesus. That's how we know love. And that's the love that we've been called and commanded to demonstrate. And so I know you don't want to think about that question, but we don't have a choice. The scripture demands, in fact, I'd say it commands, that the love that we claim to have for God will be mutual with the fact that we show the same love for one another, our neighbor, our brother, and our sister. So take time. I know you don't want to, but don't just think about the teaching here. Think hard about the application. Because if we leave here with just information, then we haven't truly grasped what John was saying for us here. We've got to leave here with a determination for application. And in doing that, I can promise you that in some way or degree, God's going to call you today to live sent.